Today, I have a story for you guys about this crazy aunt. She's literally a psycho, and she ends up crashing one of her relatives' weddings and just absolutely destroying it. It's a pretty wild story. I know you guys are gonna love it. Like the video or else you'll be abducted by aliens and eaten by them. I do in fact have contact with aliens, and if you think you can test your luck by not liking the video, trust me, the aliens will find you. Also subscribe so I can hit 69 billion subscribers. And with that all being said and done, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. So for this story, we're gonna call our subscriber, we're gonna call her Emma. Now, Emma had an absolutely insane aunt who, for the story, we will call her Aunt Beatrice. So everyone in the family was well aware that Aunt Beatrice was just absolutely crazy, and anytime that they were gonna be around her, they knew that something was gonna happen. As Emma says, Aunt Beatrice always seemed to find a way to turn an ordinary day into an extraordinary one, and not always in a good way. She was the kind of person who would show up to a funeral wearing a Hawaiian shirt and a sun hat. And yes, she actually did do that. You could also be having like a serious conversation with this person, very deep, meaningful conversation, and then out of nowhere, she would just start singing her heart out and pretend like she was never involved in a conversation at all. So, I mean, she's very rude, right? Very self-centered, but also, like I've been saying, she is insane. But what truly set Aunt Beatrice apart was her knack for causing disaster wherever she went. And that, my friends, is where Emma's story begins. One summer evening, Emma's family had a little gathering at a local park. It was a cookout barbecue, and most of the family had shown up. At first it was great, the sun was shining, the grill was smoking, and everyone was just enjoying the company of their loved ones. Now, of course, all of the family members were usually kind of on edge at family meetups like this because they knew that Aunt Beatrice was going to be there, and they knew that wherever Aunt Beatrice was, there was often trouble. People would joke around with each other and talk about how they were like surprised that Aunt Beatrice hasn't shown up and done something crazy yet. Or they'd say something like, oh, the only thing that could ruin this beautiful day is if Beatrice came over and burnt down the campsite. Like I said, it was pretty well known to everybody that Aunt Beatrice would often cause trouble wherever she was, and it was something that everyone would joke about. However, soon enough, it would become a little bit more than a joke. It would perhaps become a reality. So as everyone was sitting around enjoying the barbecue, Beatrice arrived to the campsite on her bright pink bicycle, wearing a sparkly jumpsuit and a helmet with a unicorn horn. That sounds all fun. Oh, look at Aunt Beatrice, she's the fun unicorn horn pink bicycle girl. However, that's not what anybody was thinking. Rather, they were all thinking, oh crap, Aunt Beatrice is here, stuff is about to go down. Her arrival alone caused a small commotion between everybody, but that was only the beginning. Aunt Beatrice, whenever she first arrived, kept talking to everybody about how boring this cookout was and how that they needed some real entertainment. And she just kept going on and on about, oh, this is so boring, let's do something fun. That's whenever she took off her backpack, which she was wearing just to carry this one thing because it took up all of the room in her backpack. She pulled out a pinata that was in the shape of a flamingo. Now that's irrelevant, but the pinata is relevant, okay? She pulls out a pinata from her backpack. Now, once again, she brought this whole entire backpack on her bike ride up to the camp just to carry this pinata with her. So I guess she was on standby, ready to pull out a pinata at the cookout because she knew it was going to be boring and a pinata would make it more fun or something. I seriously don't know. Like I said, she's crazy. So she pulls out the flamingo pinata and she hangs it up from a tree and then insists that everyone takes a turn and tries to swing at the pinata and break it open. This sounds like fun. All right, great. Let's do a pinata at the family cookout. It's kind of out of place, extremely obscure, but it could be great fun, right? So everyone takes their turn until eventually Emma's little cousin, who we're going to call Timmy, was about to have his go. Aunt Beatrice decided it would be a little bit of fun to swing the pinata around in circles as Timmy was trying to hit it. All right, so just vision this. You have the pinata attached to a string hanging from a tree. Beatrice was holding the string and spinning it around in circles like really fast, so Timmy couldn't hit the pinata or something. I don't know. She was spinning it and going really, really fast, and then eventually the pinata broke free from the rope and like ripped off and went flying, hit little Timmy in the face, knocked him over, and then, now this isn't entirely her fault, but I mean, like, come on, she was like swinging it really fast, really hard. The pinata ends up landing on the grill. It knocks over the grill, sends all the hot dogs and hamburgers all over the ground, but that wasn't the bad part, all right? The bad part is that the pinata pinata caught on fire and they're in the middle of the woods at a park. So like that could cause a whole entire forest fire, destroy a whole entire community. I mean, it seriously could have gotten so bad, but this pinata catches on fire. And then the ground around the grill and the pinata starts to catch on fire too. And mind you, there's a propane tank like right near the grill that's giving the grill its heat. So like a gas explosion almost happened. But luckily, one of the relatives, for some reason, like I don't even know who would carry this around. I guess if you're at a park or a camp, maybe. But they had a fire extinguisher in their trunk and they got to put out the fire before anything bad happened. But yeah, Patrice basically almost started a whole entire forest fire and a gas explosion at the family cookout. Now, I mean, she was just trying to have fun, right? She just wanted to play with a pinata at the family cookout for whatever reason. But I mean, she took it too far like she always does. And that happened. That event wasn't even the worst event that happened with Aunt Patrice though. As outrageous as that incident was, Emma knew that the pinnacle of Aunt Patrice's craziness came the day she crashed her cousin's wedding. So somehow the things that happen at this wedding are worse than Aunt Patrice nearly starting a forest fire and a gas explosion near her family. So I'm very excited to hear what happened at the wedding. So Emma and her whole entire family was at this wedding. It was her mom's cousin's wedding, which I guess would be like Emma's second cousin. I'm not entirely sure, but this was also Aunt Patrice's cousin as well, because that was Emma's mom's sister. Anyways, all that stuff gets really confusing. It would be easier just to say it was her relative's wedding. We'll call her relative Susie. Emma and her whole entire family was at Susie's wedding. It was an outside wedding at a venue next to a lake. And now Susie and her soon-to-be husband really didn't like Aunt Patrice. They had some form of argument or a fight at one point, and they just were not cool with each other at all. And also, having Aunt Patrice at the wedding would be like kind of a liability for them. Like, it just wouldn't be smart to invite her even if they weren't in a fight. But yeah, they just did not invite Aunt Patrice to this wedding. They wanted nothing to do with her. They did not want her to be there. So everything was going perfect, right? The venue was beautiful. Their wedding cake was beautifully made. You know, the air was filled with love and joy. They were about to get married. It was their big special day. And everyone there, all the family and stuff, they were all in high spirits as well. And they were all sitting around waiting for the arrival of the bride. Now, unbeknownst to everyone, Aunt Patrice had been quietly plotting a whole scene at this wedding that she was going to do. As the bride walked down the aisle looking just absolutely beautiful, there was somebody screaming from the back of the venue. All eyes turned off of the bride and went to see Aunt Patrice in the back. She was dressed in a peacock costume, complete with a tail that fanned out behind her. What? There's just no way that this is real, right? A peacock You know, initially I was doubting it, but there's no way someone comes up with the fact that she was wearing a peacock costume. That's like way too intricate and detailed. But yeah, that's what Emma says. The aunt was there crashing the wedding dressed up as a peacock. At this point, the bride is in complete disbelief. She's terrified as to what's to come. And as Emma says, she started crying. There's no way that Patrice was here right now, ruining her special day. And everything was going so well. At this point, Patrice started walking up the aisle and she started loudly saying a speech. She started talking about how the bride and groom's future was going to be awful and how she had this vision that they were going to divorce within a few years. All of this awful stuff. She was just saying some terrible things and everyone was just in absolute shock. I mean, especially the bride and groom. The priest who was up on the stand was like absolute disbelief on his face. After she said about one or two sentences, the groom's father stepped forward and firmly asked her to leave, saying, you know, you got to get out of here right now. This is unbelievable. You're a grown woman. Like, there's no way you're this immature. And that's when Aunt Patrice, with a ton of sass, turned around and started to make a dramatic exit. Reminder, she was wearing a peacock costume, okay? This is absolutely insane. The tail actually was able to spread out, and as she turned around, she like spread out the tail, Emma says, and like with a ton of sass, like started walking away. And then she jumps up onto one of the tables, knocks over a bunch of the wine glasses. You can just hear glasses breaking and stuff like that. And she starts just going like, caca, caca, She starts making like bird noises, bro. People started running over to try and get her down. Family members were yelling at her, saying that this is absolutely insane, saying that she was an embarrassment to the family, saying, you know, you need to get out of here. This is absolutely unacceptable. And that's when people started chasing her and trying to like grab her to get her down from the table so they can carry on with this wedding. You know, this was Susie and the groom's special day, and Patrice was just taking all of the attention off of them and onto herself. And she was just destroying the whole entire venue and probably costing them a ton of money. So as people were chasing her, she was just jumping from table to table. Tons of glasses were breaking. Some of the table's legs broke and fell. She was just running around until eventually she leaped onto the table that was holding the wedding cake. Now, like Emma said, the wedding cake was absolutely beautiful. It was this huge 3-layer cake with like intricate flowers. It had Susie and the groom like perfectly made on the top of the cake. It was a very, very expensive cake, thousands of dollars. And she jumps onto the table holding it, and the cake falls over. That's whenever Patrice lets out another squawk. Caw-caw! And then she starts laughing. And then she jumps off of the table and onto the cake and starts pounding the cake into the ground. I mean, Aunt Patrice, if she wasn't having a mental breakdown before, this was it, all right? This was more than a mental breakdown. This was like her brain cut a hole in the back of her head and ran away, and this was the outcome. Now, as Emma and her younger brother watched this whole entire thing play out, they honestly couldn't help but giggle. I mean, just even telling their story right now, I'm laughing at it. Could you imagine? I mean, listen, I feel awful for the bride and groom, right? Just imagine your crazy aunt showing up, crashing the wedding, dressed up as a peacock, jumping all over the tables, breaking glasses, and caw-caw, letting out like bird calls. Like, what? My question is, how did nobody film this? Like, you can't tell me everyone's first instinct was not to pull out their phones and start taking snaps of this or something. Like, this sounds absolutely insane. As she was stomping down on the cake, finally, two of the guys there grabbed Patrice and escorted her out of the venue. The bride and the groom at this point tried their best to salvage what was left of their wedding day, and amazingly, the guests rallied together to try and clean up the mess that Patrice had made, and with the help of the venue staff, a makeshift cake was put together. Now, of course, it was far from perfect. I mean, they spent thousands on the other cake, but they were able to get something to put together, and you know, it would do. Despite the chaos that Patrice had caused, the ceremony continued. The bride and groom exchanged their vows and were finally pronounced husband and wife. Now, with the reception that happened after the wedding, people were cracking jokes at it, including the bride and groom. I mean, at this point, it was just jokes. It was the most absurd thing pretty much any of them had ever seen, and they had seen their fair share of crazy things, considering that Aunt Patrice was a part of their family. But yeah, everyone was just laughing at what happened, and they were like talking about the stories of other things that happened with Aunt Patrice. There was pretty much endless stories to tell about her, so that was kind of the talk of the thing at the wedding. And in a strange way, Aunt Patrice's antics kind of brought everyone in that family closer together. After the wedding, the bride and groom actually ended up getting a restraining order from Aunt Patrice, and they hadn't had any serious problems with her. And after a few other events that had happened, a lot of other family members also got restraining orders, and basically she was just like disowned from the family. I mean, you know, Aunt Patrice at first, she seemed like she could be fun. I think somewhere in there was a good intention, but then whenever things didn't go her way and her family started like not really messing with her, I guess she coped by dressing up as a peacock and destroying a wedding. Yeah.